Well, guys, welcome back. How are you doing, Jake? Did you have a good little break there?
Got another log on the fire.
Yeah, we did put another log on the fire.
Log on the fire. It's good to be back with you guys. I was thinking about this conversation that I had with someone about a syndrome that we're all afflicted with. And I think this was kind of the whole problem of the Advantage of Average book, that I think our greatest problem is all of us feel our need to be significant, our need to matter, our need to be a big deal, wanting to be seen, wanting to be known, wanting to be celebrated. All that, is the problem. And this friend of mine's like, we were talking about this situation, and he said, yeah, I think some people are just afflicted with the smartest person in the room syndrome, where you feel like you got to be you want to be the smartest person in the room. And that person is always, I guess, the epitome of what it means to not be average.
The only room I ever experienced that is the bathroom.
Can you explain that?
Unless Marcy's in there brushing her teeth. Then it goes away.
If you're in total isolation. There's a saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I think that it was just funny how he said that that afflicted with the smartest person in the room syndrome. And I think in a way we all have that in different rooms that we want to be in. We all have this problem. And I think it's coming back to, what's the point of this podcast? What are we doing here? What are we trying to do in the Average Pastor? And that's a motif. That's a theme is we're trying to fight that tendency.
So what do you think?
Be amazing.
What do you think the most common misunderstanding then when people hear the Average Pastor? So like last episode, we gave Jeff crap about getting Alumni of the Year. So this idea of so any level of accomplishment's bad, or is ambition bad, or is it bad to dream big? Where might people hear Average Pastor? And I know we joke, but it's like, are we advocating for mediocrity in a sense of don't work hard, don't dream big?
Yeah, that's a misconception, because that's not what this is. It has to do with, it's connected. You can do great things. You can do amazing things. You can be in the Hall of Fame.
At Midwestern.
You can be the Alumni of the Year.
And it's even, the first part of that is even mid. It's like Midwestern. We are in the Midwest. We're middlings, halflings in the middle, mediocre. No, that is the misconception, because it has nothing to do with live in a box, lack ambition, just be mediocre.
Yeah. Don't work hard.
Don't work hard. No. It has to do with it's humility. It's faithfulness. It's being willing to be. It's like Peter, when he talked about is it the Greek word, I think the etymology of the word he uses for humility is to walk low to the ground. It's that, it's just not feeling the need to be impressive, to matter, to sit at the cool kids table and, eat at the breakfast of champions and be just self-promoting, the pursuit of vainglory, of making your name great. It's that remembering that we are clay pots.
Yep.
And we're filled. Yeah.
It's interesting you go to that clay pots we've been working through 2 Corinthians, and some people might look at Paul and be like, that man's a rock star. Like, look how many churches he planted and all that he accomplished. But his argument or defending his ministry to the 2 Corinthians was he sarcastically refers to his opponents as super apostles, because they were flashy, good speakers, and he self admits, I'm not a good preacher. Like I'm not
Is
very
he kind of
eloquent.
making fun of them when he calls them super apostles?
Totally. 2 Corinthians is full of sarcasm. But yeah, he's like he's even saying like the one thing I didn't do is I didn't, burden you with charging you money. Forgive me for that. Like it was kind of like,
Yeah.
but he admits like, I'm not a great preacher. I'm not flashy. I'm not this,
Was it back in the time?
is there a kid's screen?
Where is that kids? We have a park
right next to a city park. And
Yeah, that's a good soundtrack for the Average Pastor podcast. The screaming babies.
It's like,
There's
is
like
everybody
some,
okay?
I had a mom, a young mom came up and she had been a part of the ministry like 12 years ago and was like, hey, I'm listening to the podcast. And she was had her baby with her. And anyway, so maybe there's some people listening that are like, oh, crying baby, I'm in the
right place.
I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
But back to
So Paul's, that's where he says, we're just jars of clay. He's like, you want to boast? I'll boast, but I'm not going to boast like they boast in their successes. Then he talks about all his sufferings. So humility, servanthood, suffering comes out. And it was a contrast between these super apostles who were elegant and had status.
we have the same thing right now.
Yeah.
We have the same thing. It's
Paul would have been an average pastor.
there's a lot of money to be made on the speaking tour. And if you're a celebrity, the money you can make speaking, consulting,
doing podcasts.
we should try to figure that out. There's got to be a way. If we just could monetize the 500 listeners and that we have, or no, I don't know how many people listen, but the funny and I think back in that time, Jake, is I studied rhetoric in college, and the sophists back in the day were they were like the philosophers, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, but there were these other people. They were like philosophers, but they were more public speakers, more motivational speakers. They were compelling. They were fun to listen to, but a lot of the philosophers kind of looked down on them because they were just
like shallow?
Yeah, shallow and just kind of more palatable for the masses. And it's our modern day. We have that version of it. You go to the conference and listen to the guy he's published and wrote all, and you read the book and you're like, it's basically just a bunch of regurgitated pithy sayings, and it's good, but it lacks maybe the depth that you would get. Anyway, they had that same thing. I wondered if that was part of it. If back in the time, I mean, Paul's a contemporary of those guys. If those guys, there were people that were like, hey, we can profit from this, and
are you impressive?
Are you
entertaining?
So that it's the need to be. What we are doing is in the Average Pastor podcast is we are resisting the urge that all of us feel to be amazing.
Yeah,
we're trying to fight the tendency toward elitism, and we're going to name drop, and we're trying to be around other celebrity pastors, and we're trying to find ordinary, average.
But I think it's also a different approach to what we believe is effective, because when we say we've quoted before Schaefer on the Lord's work and the Lord's way, like how you do it matters, and we all love and often refer back to Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, where the hobbits were on a world-saving mission, and how you go about doing that matters. You don't want to gain the world and lose your soul. You don't want to gain the ministry world and lose your soul. So I think there's a sense of saying, hey, celebrating meekness and humbleness is a part of effectiveness. And I think the other side misses it. It's like, it's all about effectiveness. Like whatever is, you go the furthest, the fastest, the biggest, the loudest. And I think it's like, well, you lose something in that. And
There's a great average pastor moment in the Bible and a modern day example of this that I experienced this week. Just great moments in average pastor history.
Brought to you.
Acts, is it Acts, 3 or 2, 3, 4? Where Peter, I think it's 4, where they heal this guy. And Peter goes, why do you look at us as though by our power we healed this man? Yeah. It is by the Lord Jesus this man stands before you healed. That's a great moment, because someone could look at Peter on the outside and be like, you're not Peter's like, hey, I'm just an average dude. And you could push back and like, Peter, you're not average, dude. Right. You were at the transfiguration. You saw Jesus. You just healed this guy. Like, that's not average. And Peter would be like, no, it literally, like, well, I didn't do that. Jesus did. Jesus is amazing.
Yeah, you get a contrast to that later on where the sorcerer's like, hey, give me that power.
Right.
So I can do that, because he's wanting to make a name for himself and profit, and he gets rebuked.
Yeah. So
Peter's attitude wasn't like, oh, the more people doing this, the better. It's like, no, your motive matters.
Yeah. That's such a, yeah. And this week, my dad texted me this week, and he was like, you gotta listen to this. And it's a friend, Todd Baker. I have all these like brothers in a way, like through my parents, these are guys that have either lived at my parents' house or, dad discipled them or whatever. But Todd Baker, he's a guy, he and Gavin helped plant City Light Church, and they're good buddies. They were, my dad hung out with them for a time, and anyway, they're super close to my folks. And anyway, Dad sent me this link. Todd, helped plant City Light, but now he's pastoring a church in small town Nebraska, and he runs a chocolate factory that his dad started there in small town Nebraska. But he's pastoring this church. Well, he had a major fall this past week. He fell through the roof, and it terrible. Ended up. It's amazing he's alive. It's amazing he could walk, but he cracked like all of his ribs, near his spine. He collapsed lung, couldn't breathe. They didn't know if he was going to make it, but he made it. He walked out of the hospital. His lung kind of inflated on its own after 3 days. He walked out of the emergency room just a few days later, and he preached on Sunday. Like just days after it happened, preached. He's standing up there, and you could tell every breath is labored. And I wish I could play you the clip. I think their church is called The Gathering Place. You can look it up, but he tells a story. And at the end, he says that people were praying, and and the doctors and nurses said, "What faith are you? Because this is miraculous that you're in this place." And he said, well, they said, "What faith are you? What church do you go to?" He goes, "Well, I'm a Christian, and I go to a regular church." But Jesus is amazing. This is at the end of his talk, because he had just preached on Philippians and Paul's faithfulness to go, preach to Philippi, and so I'm a Christian. I go to a regular church. Regular, like, and Jesus is amazing. And then he said, the application of Philippians 1 for us is this: Paul was faithful, so here we are. There's nothing that keeps us from being faithful. Mm-hmm. I loved that statement. And here he's up. He can hardly breathe. You can see everybody's, he's laboring. He just preached the word. He's studying in the hospital, trying to, because he knows he doesn't get paid a dime from the church. He's just but he's pastoring this church. He's preaching regularly. I'm like, that is the epitome of the average pastor right there, is just saying, I'm a Christian. I go to a regular church, but Jesus is amazing. That right there. And what he had just done was, God healed him. God, he's up there preaching, and for him to say there's nothing that keeps us from being faithful. I was like, let that be a banner over this whole advantage of average thing or average pastor thing. It's faithfulness to Jesus is the gold standard, not being amazing for Jesus. This isn't and is it Ortland that's like John the Baptist said, he must become greater, I must become less. The amazing pastor says, he must become greater and I must become greater with him. It's that. No, God forbid that we boast, that we have this. I just am finishing Franklin's biography, and I know I've talked about this like for the last month, but I'm an average reader, and he just says at the end that he had a disdain for elitism, like the whole pomp and circumstance of England, the whole. You're kind of born into greatness. He's like, no, it's just, he was for the middlings, the middle people, the middle class. And he just was a tinkerer and he loved the simple things. But I was just, there's so much about it that resonates, as empty as his life is, because it is void of God. But just there is something that resonates there with me is, yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to be regular pastors leading regular churches. And yeah, God raises the dead. Yeah, God is saving and baptizing thousands. But what we're saying is, what at the conference you want to lead a breakout session, it's like, hey, why are you looking at me as though we did this? Don't try to. This isn't like, let me tell you how to do it. Let me tell you how to, first you spit in the mud, you mix it around, and then you put it on their eyes and they can see. It's like, no, it's not the form of what we're doing. Like, we shouldn't go around and, I mean, there's stuff we've learned. There's, I'm not.
Why do you think this is a important perspective to bring to people in ministry right now?
Oh, we are afflicted with this. It's because people are pouring gasoline on that ambition to be a celebrity pastor, be go be great for God and do great things. And I think I'm all for see God do great things. And I look at some of the different church planning, how to say this? I see a lot of the ministries, the people that are pursuing amazing, and there's a fine line between I want to be amazing, I want to do amazing things for God, and I want to be amazing with God, or something like that. There's a very fine line there that probably, runs right through the heart of every person where that line is. But I think that this is I don't know, like an
it goes all the way back. I mean, it's not sophisticated. It goes all the way back to the garden. In the very first temptation is you can be like God. And God in the Ten Commandments is like, I want no other gods beside me. You know what I mean? Like, don't think you can sidle up to God. You know what I mean? That idea that, oh yeah, I want God to be great, but I want me to be great beside him. And that's like the cardinal sin of the garden. It's the cardinal sin of the Ten Commandments is no, all glory to Jesus. No, get out of the spotlight. In fact, if any spotlight starts coming on you, be like Paul and Barnabas, right? When they were mistaken as like gods. Oh, no. They're running into the crowd to say, stop. No, we got to have that.
Is that request to sit on your right and left hand in the kingdom? Or,
right.
The kind of the pushback to this podcast or this question is like, well, what are you guys doing? This seems a little self-promoting. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think the need to address this perspective. So hopefully born out of a care for like, how do we beat this drum louder for more people to catch on, not what's our way to have everybody has, but let's have our podcast. It's kind of the anti-podcast, and it's still a podcast. So it's like, we don't want to fall into that as well.
Right.
But I do think you don't hear a lot of championing of maybe against unhealthy ambition in ministry. Mm-hmm. And hey, let's have a big mission. Let's just do it like hobbits type of thing. I think that needs to be said. I remember, I think I told you, I may be getting this quote wrong. I think Piper was asked one time, like, do you feel bad promoting your books? Like, is that self-promotion? He's like, well, no, I'm promoting the glory of God. That's what I write about. So I don't feel, so I think promoting this, you want to be great, be a servant type of approach to ministry is, I don't think we should feel bad about.
Yeah, I think that is a great moment where Jesus is teaching them how to be average, where they're arguing about who's going to be the greatest, and he says, not so with you. Mm-hmm. Whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. And he says, you've seen the Gentiles lord it over those entrusted to them. Not so with you. Like, they're pursuing power, authority in ways that leverage people and use people. And Jesus is like, no. That's not how we're going to do this. We're going to...
Even when he says they love to be called benefactors.
What does that mean?
So, if you want to be known because of the good deeds that you do, especially for the poor, but if your goal is actually not to meet the needs of the poor and the marginalized or whatever, but it's to be known as a benefactor, you know what I mean? That was one of the other indictments, which is a really scary thing, that Jesus is like, oh yeah, there are people that love to be called generous benefactors, whatever, you know what I mean? But it's not out of a love for the least of these. It's because they actually want to use that as a platform to get the applause of men, And
I think sometimes you feel there's an aspect, and I know it myself as well. There's an aspect of going into ministry these days where you could be turned on by the entrepreneurial pursuit of it. Because it's like, you get to run a company, you get to be in charge of branding and strategy, and you get to be out front, and you get to be in charge, and leadership is a part of ministry. But I feel like that's been elevated so much that that's the most attractive draw. And what's getting missed out is if you're going into ministry, you're going to be a servant, you're going to be a pastor, you're going to die to yourself and serve people. And we can't forget that. And it feels like the entrepreneurial part of ministry overshadows the pastoral part of ministry.
Right. Yes.
And I think average pastor is like, hey, don't think you're a big deal CEO. You're a pastor. And I love that message.
I was reading the old guys, my Caleb's that we meet. Talk about them all the time because that's one of my favorite groups. I was reading them, one of the, basically a ministry that is kind of a benefactor ministry, and I was reading them their distinctives, and there's a siren.
Wow, okay, we need to hit pause.
10:01. So, hey, James, what do we do? Do we just keep talking? Do we power through the siren, or do we hit pause? This is the most average pastor thing ever.
I forgot to check the city website to see if there was a test of the siren system today.
Because you would have asked the city to hold off.
Guys, we're recording a podcast. It's the average pastor podcast. You got to hold off on that.
We are a big deal.
This is maybe the noisiest. We had the crying kid. We had a woodpecker a little bit.
Woodpecker during Jake's thing.
We've got the sirens. It's a beautiful day, by the way. There isn't a tornado.
That's true.
Yeah.
No one's wondering, we're not
shelter.
in danger. We're fine. Don't freak out.
That's what we think.
The listeners are like, oh no, are they okay?
Let's run to the basement.
Oh, do you remember what you were saying before we get interrupted by the siren? Because it was going to be profound. Yeah.
I don't know. It's. Oh yes. I was reading to the Caleb guys this ministry's kind of core distinctives and basically after reading all of it to him, like it's basically like we are gonna help you be amazing. And I asked the old guys, I'm like, what do you guys think about this? And the first guy was like, where is God in all of this? There was not one mention of God.
Yeah.
There was not one mention of Jesus.
So, oh no, it's back.
James, so much for you calling the city and
This reminds me of like, and this sounds really insensitive because living in Iowa, storms can do a lot of damage. But when the news stations have to like cover the storm until it's over, and it's like 3 counties over, and you're just like, just go back to the show. Like, it's just,
We're good.
I know they
we
can't
know what
keep
to
going
do.
back. Yep, it's still windy out there. Let me watch my program.
Yeah, because for me, it's usually a really good NBA playoff game 7 or something is getting interrupted by a tornado somewhere.
Somewhere far away, but it's in Iowa. They got to cover it.
but you're in Cedar Rapids, dude. When derecho came through, for all the people that are like, just put the show back on. As
the oak trees sitting there and crushes their TV.
I don't
in their
think
living
people
room.
in Des Moines have to have 24-hour coverage of our derecho, but I mean, locally, let us know. But
Well, there are
you
TV
didn't need the news if you had a window. Like you can look at it. It's windy.
You didn't need the news if you had a window.
you were in your basement watching. Oh my word!
Did I tell you about I probably have my derecho parent fail. Mo was
Oh yeah, tell it. Yeah,
Mo's home by himself, and I'm at work. Marcy's out of town, and with the girls, and it's blowing hard. When I don't know the level of the storm. I didn't have a TV. I just had a window. Like So I was so worried about our bag chairs that were out by the fire pit, like deep in our backyard.
And it's that's about not quite a football field. That's a ways.
It's a little bit of a jaunt. So I like, Mo, go get the chairs. And he's like, you want me to go out there? I was like, yeah, just I don't want those blown away. So good, obedient child who doesn't push back goes and gets the chairs. Well, 2 trees blow over his head. On the way. The neighbor's pool, he hit the ground while the neighbor's pool blew by him. So he calls me and he's telling me what happened. And I just like, did you get the chair? Like these $20 bag chairs. I don't know what I was thinking.
That's great. How are the chairs?
How are the chairs? What were we talking about?
I don't know.
Okay, because all those like the hallmarks of that ministry were bereft of any.
Yeah, it's we're going to tell you in some easy steps how to be amazing and how to have a mega church, how to have so the question is, to what extent, I'm trying to think of how to say this, because it's not, these are people that love Jesus, and I want to be careful to, how do you talk about it in a way it's discerning but not disparaging? I think the question becomes, to what extent will you go to partner with and come alongside these brothers in Christ that maybe have a little different approach that frankly I have an aversion to. you're not trying to be a clay pot who's filled with the Holy Spirit. You're trying to use these strategies and principles that if you do these things the way we tell you, that it will equal amazing outcome. And then to what extent would you go to receive funding and different things to do that?
No, I wrestle sometimes. What does it mean to just function in the culture that we're in? We're in a prosperous culture. We're trying to do ministry here. There's challenges, but I wonder if in that you lose a flavor, because you can be socially and successful. You can make a good living going into ministry. There's a certain appeal to that, but I go back to, just our brothers in Zambia, where it's like you graduated the pastor's training. Here's a bicycle. Mm-hmm. That'll get you to the next village so you can preach the gospel. Mm-hmm. Is there a flavor in the ministry that's just clearly about Christ and not mixed with what we can get from it? Because the call, hey, you want to follow me? Take up your cross, be willing to die. This is going to be hard, is different than, hey, you want to plant a church? We'll make sure it's big and booming and you're going to be a rock star.
I feel like it could almost be the evangelical version of the prosperity gospel, because we look at prosperity gospel preachers and we call that out. Hey, if you give $1,000, if you pray this thing or write in for this token, here's what's going to happen. We promise you, da, da, da. And we just look at that. Oh, what charlatans.
Yeah.
But we have the same kind of pragmatism being sold. Like, hook your wagon to us. We'll give you the 5 secrets to.
If you do this, and this, you'll be an influencer. You'll be
totally,
and you'll sit with the cool kid pastors. You will sit with, and there's a lot of name dropping, and there's a lot of in our little cohort. You're going to be learning from this person and this person, and it's how to do this and how to, and
it's just pragmatism. It's pure. That's why you can leave Jesus out of it, and nobody even notices. It's the same thing with the charlatans on the prosperity gospel.
Here's how you plan a church. You get attractive young people in hip clothes and good music. There's your church. People will come to that. And it's like, you didn't say anything about God. You didn't say anything about. So is there just
we'll give you $500,000, Jake.
Yeah.
Would you do it? Like if you're that 30-year-old church planner and you're going to go and you're going to a place that's very expensive and you're trying to raise your family and they're like, yeah, slap our name on it and we'll give you this money.
Maybe.
Whoa. What?
I mean,
what is happening right now? Where's the sirens? Somebody call the sirens. I want the sirens back on.
Hey, Israel plundered Egypt on their way out. What strings are attached
to? Oh man! You have to. What strings are attached? Like you have to go to our conferences and our coaching. And you have to come.
I thought I was just going to get a check. Yeah, you didn't color in that stuff.
You want to We're your new friends.
Yeah, no, I don't do that.
So that's
wear that banner.
I might negotiate. How about 250,000 without the connections? Let's negotiate.
Because you got to have that stamp.
Yeah.
On your ministry, you've got to have.
Like we said,
you got to carry the banner.
The Lord's work in the Lord's way. It matters. It really does. And I think another danger is judging success in pragmatism.
Yes.
It's not successful because it's big. Being big may be a sign of not success. So I think we're working off the wrong metrics sometimes. We're judging success in a wrong way, and it messes with our pursuits.
One of the guys in my old guys group was like, you might not want to start with 500 people at your first thing.
Right.
Like
Oh.
He said, what if you have 20 like real Christians that are
When is it too just an idolization of youth? So it's like, hey, you're 30, you've never pastored anything, you've probably preached 50 times in your life. Why don't we give you a church and we'll give you an overwhelming amount of people right away? That sounds like a recipe for.
That sounds like the Jesus way.
Yeah, but it's kind of like we're going to celebrate youth, we're going to celebrate size, we're going to celebrate location, and which I think we just need different metrics of faithfulness and pace and stability.
Well,
and
even to that point too, it was funny that so this last Sunday, Mark brought up the Bodines, who's a family, you're related to him, Jake. They're dear friends of ours who came to help plant Veritas. And Mark will often speak of them appropriately as pace setters. They did that. They, without a job promised to them or whatever, they just came to be part of starting this church in Iowa City. But Holly was saying so beautifully, she's like, sometimes I get a little uncomfortable kind of being the poster child for we did it right, we sacrificed so much, because sometimes I think Mark should talk about the times that I was so done with this church plant. Holly's saying, like, send me back. I want to go back. I'm so done. And and she was just like appropriately talking about how hard it was. It was not glamorous. It wasn't. It didn't quickly just ignite to become this incredibly successful, in air quotes, thing. It was hard and often painful and wanted to turn back. Yeah. You know what I mean? And she said, because that's the real story. It's not the heroism or whatever as much as it is the grit, and the pain.
And you can do, I think you can do all those things of, you can be the hip young, have the cool worship, start with hundreds of people at your kickoff and do it that way. And it can glorify God. You can be an average pastor and do that.
How?
Do you know
how? I agree with you. But,
you can, because it's not about the form of it. It's about the heart and the motivation and the, why am I doing this? And it's not do you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to equate all of that as bad. Because there are godly, humble, dynamic, young pastors that are doing great things.
I would put one caveat caution on that. It's like, it's not wrong to wear nice clothes and be who you are in the generation that you are, and in good and godly ways or unsinful ways. But if it's part of your strategy, or there's just an exerted amount of effort to be hip, then I would say that's
yes. But that comes back to a motivation.
Right. When you say it's not wrong to be hip, I'd want to press into, like, it might be wrong to try to be hip.
So here's the example. I loved Ryan Hamby's last sermon at Salt. It was early May, late April, if anyone wants to go back and listen to it. But basically, I think he shared his testimony of becoming an average pastor. And it was when he was, he was like early 20s, 22, 23, somewhere in there, had just graduated from college, and Drew Stevenson was planning a church in the Twin Cities. And he asked Ryan to go, and Ryan was all on board. It was just an immediate yes. It was funny. I still remember the staff meeting where we went around. Our little staff were in that office off Highway 1, and this would have been like 2016, 17, somewhere in there. And Ryan was like, we went around the staff and like, well, who wants to go? And Ryan's like, I'm in. And then I think the next person was Isaac Schmidt. He's like, I'm out. I'm not going. Well, Ryan didn't go. Isaac did go. So that was kind of funny. But the process was, Ryan went around telling all his friends, and I should let him tell the story. We should bring him on sometime, talk more about that. But just basically, I'm going, and they asked me to do it, and I'm going to be the youngest, salt director, and he was fired up, and he was excited, and, he's 22. How can you not have your head swell up a little bit? And he's stoked, recruiting people to go with him. And then we sit down with him. He comes to our elder meeting, and it's basically like, no, we think that you're not prepared. You need to stay and be faithful. And over the next 9 years, say, we said, not only should you not do that, here's an idea. Why don't you jump into youth ministry? Be faithful with some teenagers. And I remember his first little promo video was like with the 12 kids that were the awkward. It was basically like, I don't know, it was like 12 that they filmed it right over in your park, over here. And it's just, Ryan was faithful in that season to be a youth pastor. Then, he's been faithful to lead Saul, and every step, like, to me, he passed the faithfulness test.
Well, because that ambition may not have been a mark that he should go. That ambition, like you guys all noted, was very likely the mark that said, no, then you shouldn't go. So I'm just saying, when we have organizations that just reward ambition.
So
how do you,
Jeff, how would you walk somebody, help them to discern whether their ambition is a good ambition or a bad ambition? Like, what do you look for in that?
Well, I mean, I do. The reason I even looked at my phone, I couldn't remember where that was, but it's in Jeremiah, where it, but as for you, do you pursue great things for yourself? Stop pursuing. That's in Jeremiah 45.
Wow.
That idea that sometimes it's only time and discipleship, right, under just older, wise leaders that can split the hair to realize, wait, is this ambition truly of the Lord, and you really are seeking the glory of the Lord, or are you just ambitious and you just want to make a name for yourself? And so, honestly, the time, right, under discipleship is
listening to those people that have discipled you. Ryan, and it was our elder team.
Yeah, it was trusted people.
And I thank the Lord for Troy Nesbitt was in that elder meeting, and he was the one, and he told Drew, he's like, Drew, if you need Ryan Hamby, like, if you can't plant this church without this 22-year-old, like, you shouldn't go. You're not the guy if you need him to, because Drew was, I want Ryan to go. And Drew was great. I mean, he responded so well too, because it was much a challenge for Ryan getting the no, you need to stay and be faithful, to Drew as you need to go and trust God for provision. And, sometimes, so both Ryan and Drew, in ways, kind of passed the faithfulness, trusting God test. I think that's the thing that you want. And I learned that at Cornerstone. I mean, there was 15 years there of you and Troy, the elders, others investing in me, being humbled. We had conflicts. I mean, there's a lot of times where it was just like I had to submit. I had to learn that I want to be faithful. I mean,
it sounds like another episode. Just go through all the conflicts with Mark.
So I was that young pastor that had to pass the faithfulness test, and I was that young pastor sent out at 33 to plant Veritas, and I probably wouldn't have gone out any sooner. And I thank God for it. And there's always going to be, I'm amazing, I'm a big deal mixed into it. Even now, how do you, and I think this isn't just for 30-year-olds. This is for 48-year-olds and 62-year-olds, It's like you never stop. Like, I think that the whole average thing. It's something to aspire to. It's not ever something you attain, because it's about humility. It's about letting Jesus be great through you.
Yeah.
Do you ever stop needing that?
Maybe this is off, but one of the indicators that bothers me in trying to assess ambition is how specific they feel their calling is. In a sense of, it's not I feel called to necessarily be a servant, or I feel called to preach, or I feel called to be a pastor. I feel called to be a pastor in this location, in this type of church, with these type of people. So it feels like you're wanting something different.
Interesting.
Because if you want to preach, we can do that. If you want to pastor, we can do that in a lot of places. But if you're like, well, I'm not really excited to serve a bunch of old people, and I'm not really excited to not be in a happening place, and I'm not really like, it's, you start to get so specific. It's like, I don't know if your posture is like, I'll serve the Lord wherever.
Right.
It's, I'm called to be in a cool place with cool people and be the leader of that.
Well, that's the opposite of the Isaiah thing. That's like, here am I, Lord, send me, ...
Yeah.
to this, like
To where you're not going to
it's
be
God
successful.
who made the,
And I'm not saying people aren't called to places. I think it just raises a caution in listening to somebody when they're overly specific of the type and location, to the point where it's like, oh, if I'm called to preach, but if I had to preach there to them, then I'm not called to preach.
Yeah.
How would you, but maybe some pushback would be, Paul, like, I want to go to Spain. That's my whole reason for writing this big letter to you guys, is I want to use you guys as a launching pad to get to
But along
Spain.
the way, he was willing to be rerouted.
Right.
And
We're
was
going to
open-handed.
Macedonia.
And that's what, because even right now with both Ryan and Austin, the two that are most prominently being sent out from Veritas in the near future, both of them have had aspirations to go and lead and strike out. But both of them have said, oh, but right now, hey, we need you to go to Dubuque. We need you to lead the youth. We need you to lead international. We need you to, okay. Their yes was always on the table.
Because they went to some of the least cool places on earth for years. I mean, let's face it, they're going to probably two of maybe some of the most beautiful places on planet Earth, Santa Barbara, San Sebastian. But you know, one of my kids, this was years ago, and I told him Ryan was wanting to plant a church in California, and he said, Dad, is he average enough? And I'm glad to say now, yes, son, he's average enough.
Yeah.
Which is, he's going low to the ground.
Yes.
And he understands, yes, we are not just going to, he's a pastor who's committed to doing the Lord's work in the Lord's way. And that has to do with humility, dependence on the Holy Spirit, trusting Jesus, not trying to be self-promoting and not trying to be amazing, but he understands he's been rocked, shaken by the glory of God, and he's going with the right motives, the right mission. So he's submitted, he's learned faithfulness. I mean, those are all the things. Yes, he's average enough. And he's dynamic. I mean, both those guys, Ryan and Austin, are incredibly dynamic. So again, it's not about mediocrity, is not like they're not very good at what they're doing. No, they're incredibly gifted, but
and you can, it's disposition. I think you can be called to places like but I feel like if your disposition, like if any call is beneath you, then every call is above you. Like I don't know how we said it before. Like if there's places that you just wouldn't go, then maybe you shouldn't go anywhere. Like if you just,
can you say that again? What did you say?
If you feel like any call is beneath you, then I would say every call is above you. Like
you shouldn't do anything.
You shouldn't do anything. And I'm not saying but your posture should be like, oh, like,
here am I, Lord, send me anywhere, anytime. Yeah. Man, there's so many things I wanted to talk about, and I wasn't even
This
expecting
isn't the
to have
last
this.
time we're going to have a conversation.
Take a note.
Can I this I'm gonna okay here's a this is on topic ish and also a pivot at the same time. This is I wanted to talk about, while we're on this topic of the glory of God and that, oh man, I was asked to speak at men's ministry on joy. And basically I told my joy testimony. I have a joy testimony, and I was curious. I'm going to turn it back to you guys and ask about your joy testimony, but it has to do with. So I grew up in a very missions oriented church context, Christian Missionary Alliance, and I thank God for that denomination and the ways that God used that in my home church growing up. But it was like, you go to the conferences as youth and it's like Friday night, you give your life to Jesus. Saturday night, you give your life to missions, going to the 1040 window or going to Africa or doing those things. So I was on my knees at every one of those conferences, like, here am I, Lord, send me. And I kind of lived with a bit of guilt that real Christians are overseas missionaries and I want to be a real Christian, but so anyway, it was very like missions, and then here's my joy testimony it felt, a little bit duty driven. Like, we're going to do our duty to get to the ends of the earth. But then it was the winter, January 1997, sitting in the first ever Passion Conference in Austin, Texas, and this guy gets up in his pleated, jacket. This guy we never heard of, John Piper, and for the first time, it's like he opens the fire hydrant and he preaches on the glory of God. And it was like, for me, it was like a Copernican revolution of my faith. It was the moment of realizing, wait, Earth is not the center of the universe. Everything doesn't revolve around planet Earth. For me, it was like, no way. The glory of God. That's what this is. Everything else is penultimate to that one thing. Everything else is downstream. And then I started, devouring Piper, and we had this. So I was a part of probably the young, restless, reformed movement that's that Colin Hansen wrote about. And a lot of it came out of that conference. So a lot of guys you talk to in their upper 40s, early 50s are guys like me who started listening to Piper and getting bit by that glory of God bug. But why it was a joy testimony is because you realize that really John Piper was just repackaging Jonathan Edwards' stuff on why did God create the world? Why are we here? And as a fountain is inclined to overflow, so God overflowed into creation. It was out of abundance. It wasn't, God doesn't have a testimony. It's like, I was lonely, I was lacking purpose, and then I created mankind, and now my life is fulfilled. It's like, no, it was out of an abundance. So how do you glorify God? You glorify him not by adding to his glory, but by receiving and it's joy. In God, it consists all goodness and abundance. It's like the overflow is the overflow of his joy and goodness, and the infinite goodness of God is a clue to the meaning of the universe. Like, why you're here is meant to receive from this infinite fountain of good. That's all Edwards through Piper, now me regurgitating it. And I sat there as a, 1997. So yeah, I was 20 years old, sitting there listening to this alongside Jeff and others. And it completely changed my whole outlook. Now I'm not, it's not so much God's glorified by me serving him and doing my duty, but by me enjoying him. The chief end of man is to glorify God. And Piper would say, by enjoying him forever. God is most glorified in us when we're most satisfied in him. So that sent me on a journey of just enjoyment of God. And that really changed everything for me. And I'm wondering how that. Do you guys have? Where were you? When you were impacted by, that message. Did it land with as much, I guess, impact as it did me? And then out of that, I've got some other questions for you guys. But that was kind of something I was thinking about as my own experience of my own joy testimony and understanding that it's the glory of God. It's not about anything else. Everything else is downstream from that. Church planning, missions, serving, it's all downstream. And if you aim for anything other than that, you will miss it completely. Do you guys have, Jake, because your book is that.
Yeah.
God the prize. And
my book's Piper for Dummies by a dummy.
But when did that happen for you? When did you?
Yeah, I didn't have a conference moment. It was more probably a drip. I was early on in ministry because I was a lead pastor in a small town church at 24, and probably more influenced by the pragmatism of Willow Creek and North Point on just reach people, church strategy, success. How do we build this thing? And when you're young, you're reading and listening to a lot of different people, just trying to learn all you can, and starting to listen to Piper more on that. And I think just over time, the bigness of God just overtook, this is what it's all about.
So slow drip for you.
Yeah. His book, Desiring God, was a game changer for me theologically, and then hence all of what ministry's about and what life's about. But I don't remember where I was or what happened. And I think it was more of a slower shift realization.
Yeah, I think for me, it was pre-Piper. It seems like we're looking for a conversion moment to Piper.
Well, and you're Piper's regurgitating Edwards, which I would say was regurgitating Paul.
Yeah, I was going to say the Bible. But for me, I think because my early days as a Christian were in a pretty legalistic, rules-driven environment, which in many ways was a good thing for a lawless guy like me to have some regiment in my early days as a Christ follower. But then I just became pretty quickly a Pharisee, a Pharisee in training. And so you read your Bible like this, and you use these bookmarks, and you pray like this, and, and you take on maybe the form instead of the purpose of some of that stuff. So when I read Jerry Bridges' Transforming Grace, and then ultimately The Discipline of Grace, those two books was for me that moment because Transforming Grace is all written for people like me who had read Pursuit of Holiness, his
another
earlier
Bridges,
book,
yeah.
that, you got to get up at 4:00 and run for 5 miles and then come back and do this and Bible reading and prayer. And so, okay, is that the way to become, so Transforming Grace, he realized that he was creating a bunch of that and just made it all about grace upon grace upon grace. So for me, if there was a more bold shift in the way that I was pursuing joy and grace and the happiness of God, it would be that. So it was a few years into my faith.
Yeah.
But were you, I wasn't there. I didn't live through it, but maybe from a distance. Was Jeff really crucial of kind of introducing big God theology to a lot of college students, coming to Ames for the first time? Was that, or did that exist before?
Can you define big God theology?
Well, I wanted to say introducing just a care for theology.
Because I picture
the Bible and the glory of God is central.
I think that here's why I'm it could sound like, oh, we're all sharing our John Piper testimony, is where I'm kind of at the same time uncomfortable yet okay with it, because I think about Martin Luther, people in the 1600s talking about, where were you, like 1500, where were you when you first heard Luther talk about justification by faith, and kind of thanking him for helping
100%.
them see something that they had never seen before. Where were you when you first heard Luther tell you, his story, and
hopefully every age has those heroic spokesmen. Like God raises up certain voices to really spark a prairie fire, and Piper was certainly that.
Yeah. And where will people be when they're like, man, the first time I heard the message of average? Where were you?
So it comes full circle.
People are telling their testimonies of, man, where I was when I first learned that I too could be average.
In the bathroom.
I was in the bathroom staring in the mirror, and I realized I'm not a big deal.
Oh, that's funny.
That's a part where I'm like, I am actually thankful specifically to John Piper for helping me see that. Is that no, he was drawing from Lewis and Edwards and all these guys,
for sure.
You know what I mean? And so your question about Jeff is, I do think that is something that, what I remember you beating on was, hey guys, like, careful with this. Like, God is most glorified in us when we're satisfied in him. That's good, but you were trying to like soften it, not soften it. You were trying to temper us in saying, I think that's where Jeff's is a very well-rounded. It's not his. He didn't like completely jump on that bandwagon in a way.
Yeah,
but for me, it felt like there was two streams. One of the is like I just wanted Bible. Give me a lot of Bible. I want to understand my Bible, but it felt like there's ministry pragmatism world. How do you do? And then there's the Bible world.
Yeah,
and then the more I was in Bible world, it laid on top of like, oh, this is what everything is about. Because it kind of felt like you could be consumed with the latest strategy and model and method, and you kind of neglect holding up the glory of God, which shapes everything. Some of my
favorite podcasts to listen to are guys that are in that stream of the glory of God, Bible guys, Reformed, but they're very anti, the other world of practical strategy. And I want to learn from both. You know, I probably even the people out there, the ministries that I feel are a little out there trying to be amazing and make successful celebrity pastors with massive congregations. Like I want to sit under them and learn what I can from. I mean, there might be some practical things in there, like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good idea. Why are we doing it this way? Like there's a place for that. You can always learn from somebody. I think that's probably a distinctive of someone who's aspiring to be average, is like, just try to be more interested than you are interesting, be curious and learn.
I think the cool thing about Piper is, you're right. There was a part of me that was hesitant because I'd been maybe on enough of those bandwagons by that point. This too shall pass kind of thing. But the thing about specifically John Piper is, what's that Lewis quote? Like, spend most of your time reading stuff that's at least
100 years old.
100 years old or something like that. In other words, wait for a book to kind of stand the test. Right, yeah. I'm saying Piper continued, like even when we started having our summer missions teams read Let the Nations Be Glad, like it kept going and it stood that time to this day, right? So will set those apart from a lot of the pragmatic stuff that honestly doesn't have a long shelf life. Yeah. Like it won't be long, and we're going to be on to the next trend or the next pragmatism or whatever. Those guys that actually rock your soul don't just give you a new bag of tricks, but rock your soul. And, for me, R.C. Sproul, John MacArthur, John Piper, there's been a handful of those, you know what I mean? And those are the ones you really want to hold on to, that you're like, oh man, I remember not when I learned how to raise money faster, but I learned a whole new way to approach God that will forever shape me. Yeah. And that's why I do think John Piper has continued to do that. You know what I mean?
What's the shelf life of the Average Pastor podcast?
How many episodes the Lewis quote, I don't know if this is the one you were thinking about, but Lewis said, "It is a good rule after reading a new book never to allow yourself another new one till you have read an old one in between."
There we go. I had nothing. That is exactly, I don't know how you figure it out from what I said. That was the quote I was looking for, but that's the one. Say it one more time real quick, because that's a good one.
It is a good rule after reading a new book never to allow yourself another new one till you have read an old one in between.
That's really good.
A mentor guy discipled me years ago, said it this way. He's like, the mantra of the 60s was don't trust anyone over 30. And he goes, but I say, don't trust anyone under 300. Kind of a different spin on that same idea is like going back to learning from the old. That's why I stay anchored with meeting with my old guys. So I'm like, hey guys, what do you think about this? And they always, they're just impervious to hype. To use
that's a great way to
Ryan
say
Hamby quote is that they've been through it, and I think that for us, I think the older we get, that's why I still lean into Jeff's wisdom. I mean, I think you do a great job of temperance, and even back then in '97, just like, okay, this is good, but let's also be discerning and not just jump on this bandwagon as this is the new thing and everyone's gonna, because you guys, it's time to wrap it up. Oh man, I wanted to talk about AI.
Too late.
This is we're not.
This is gonna be like your main topic. We gotta land the plane
next time. Hey, can we put this on the docket?
Wow. Are we actually gonna have an agenda? You're making me nervous.
Careful. I'm going to tell you all the things and we can decide if we want to come back to this.
Let's do it. Let's come back to it.
And because there's a lot of I had so much other stuff I wanted to talk about, but
you're about ready to start another rabbit trail.
No, we're not, because you got to go, and we all got to carry on. And what are these listeners? What things should they be doing right now that they're not doing because they're listening to this? They might also need to go, our listeners.
It's probably
they can hit pause.
Are you looking for Mark's pause button?
Okay, we'll hit pause. We'll be back in another month to talk about this stuff. All right, so you guys, another great conversation. I love hanging with you guys. It's fun. We had we had jets flying over. We had sirens going off. We got fire crackling, birds chirping. But this was...
It's the live audience.
Yeah.
Oh, another great conversation. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed just being a part. And we love that you're a part of the conversation. And as we want to hear your comments and kind of how you're processing this and what topics this stirs up in you. Maybe we can talk about those next time. So any last words, Jake or Jeff, before we break?
No, friendship is good. It's been great.
Love it.
One of the greatest gifts of God in this life. Great friends, great time together, conversation. So thanks for joining us. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.